At 12:40 p.m. on June 8, 1924, Noel Odell spotted two tiny figures through his telescope, moving slowly upward on the northeast ridge of Mount Everest. He was watching from 26,000 feet. The figures were 800 feet higher. One of them was George Mallory, the other was Andrew Irvine. Minutes later, clouds rolled in. Odell never saw them again. No one did. For 75 years, Everest kept what happened next. The mountain doesn't give answers. It gives bodies when it chooses, and in 1999 it chose to give back Mallory, frozen, face down, arms extended upward as if still climbing. But the question remained, did they reach the summit 29 years before Hillary and Norgay, or did they die trying 800 feet short? The 1924 British Everest Expedition had already failed twice. Edward Norton reached 28,126 feet without oxygen on June 4th, the highest any human had climbed. He turned back snowblind and exhausted. Then Mallory, on his third Everest expedition in 3 years, asked for one more chance. He would take Irvine, the youngest man on the team, 22 years old. Irvine had never climbed above 23,000 feet before Everest, but he understood the experimental oxygen apparatus better than anyone. Mallory needed oxygen to go higher than Norton, and Irvine could keep the bottles working. They left Camp 6 at 26,800 feet on the morning of June 8th. The plan was simple: climb the northeast ridge, cross the second step, reach the summit by early afternoon, be back at Camp 6 by dark. The second step is a 90-foot vertical rock cliff at 28,300 feet. No one had climbed it in 1924. No one knew if it could be climbed. Norton had avoided it by traversing lower on the north face into the yellow band, where he nearly died. Mallory chose the ridge instead, straight at the step. Modern climbers use a metal ladder bolted to the rock in 1975 by a Chinese team. Mallory had cotton rope. Irvine had an ice axe, and they had oxygen bottles that weighed 30 pounds each and lasted 3 hours. At that altitude, with that gear, the second step was the hardest free climb on Earth. If they climbed it and survived it, the summit was close, just 500 vertical feet beyond. But the day was already half gone. Noel Odell was climbing in support. His job was to reach Camp 6, resupply it, and wait for Mallory and Irvine to return. He left Camp 5 at 8 a.m. By noon, he was at 26,000 feet, just below Camp 6. The weather had been clear all morning. Then he saw them, through a break in the clouds, two black dots, moving upward on the ridge, near a prominent rock step. He watched for 5 minutes. He described them as moving with alacrity, strong, not struggling. Then the clouds closed in and stayed closed. Odell reached Camp 6 at 2 p.m., empty. No sign of the summit pair. He waited through the afternoon. By evening, he knew something was wrong. He spent the night alone at 26,800 feet. At dawn, he climbed higher, searching. He found nothing, just wind and empty ridge. Mallory had told Odell they would summit by noon. It was 12:40 when Odell saw them, and they were still climbing, still 800 vertical feet below the top. That meant at least 3 more hours of ascent, which put them at the summit no earlier than 3:45 p.m. On Everest in June, the sun sets at 7 p.m. But temperatures drop fast after 2. The wind picks up, and they had to descend the same route. In 1924, no one had survived a night above 26,000 feet without a tent. Mallory knew this. He had written about it. The turnaround time should have been noon. By 1 p.m., they should have been descending. Instead, they were still going up. It was the wrong call. Which rock step did Odell see them climbing? He said a prominent step near the skyline. That matches the second step. But in later years, he changed his account, said maybe it was the first step, lower and easier. If it was the second step, they climbed the hardest pitch on the mountain in 1920s gear, a 90-foot vertical wall, at 28,300 feet, where exhaling takes effort, where tying a knot requires rest breaks. Modern climbers with the ladder still find the second step difficult. Without the ladder, with cotton rope and no protection, it's a death route. But Mallory was one of the best rock climbers in Britain, and Irvine was strong. If anyone could have climbed it, they could have. The question is whether they did. Odell described them as moving steadily, crossing a snow slope, approaching a rock step, then climbing it. He used the word alacrity. That suggests strength, not exhaustion. But at 12:40, their oxygen would have been running out. Each bottle lasted 3 hours at climbing flow rate. They left Camp 6 at 8 a.m. By 1 p.m., the bottles would be empty, which means they either climbed the second step on empty bottles or they had cached spare bottles higher up. The expedition had placed oxygen dumps along the route, but no cache was ever found above Camp 6. If they ran out of oxygen below the second step, the climb becomes nearly impossible. If they had oxygen, the climb is merely desperate. Either way, by the time Odell saw them, they were committed. Too high to turn back safely. Too late in the day. Going up was the only option left. The 1924 expedition sent search parties up for 5 days. They found nothing. No bodies, no gear, no tracks above Camp 6. The monsoon arrived and covered everything. In 1933, Percy Wynne Harris found an ice axe at 27,760 feet below the first step. It could have been Irvine's, but it proved nothing about how far they got. For 75 years, Everest kept them. Other climbers died and were found quickly. Mallory and Irvine vanished completely. The Chinese claimed to have seen a body on the North Face in 1975, but they gave no coordinates, no details. The mountain had swallowed them until 1999. On May 1st, 1999, Conrad Anker found a body on the North Face at 26,760 feet, frozen alabaster white, face down, arms extended upward. The clothing was intact, layers of cotton and silk. The body had a broken leg, a rope around the waist, snapped, and a severe forehead injury. The name tag inside the collar read G. Lee Mallory. He had fallen, slid. The rope had broken under impact. But he was 1,000 vertical feet below the second step, on the descent route, which meant he had climbed higher. How much higher? No one knows. The body carried no oxygen bottles, no summit camera, no diary. Irvine's body has never been found. The only evidence that might prove they summited, a photograph of Mallory's wife that he promised to leave on top, was not on the body. Either he left it on the summit, or he never reached it. The exact sequence has been examined for 75 years. The evidence is incomplete. Mallory was found 1,000 feet below the summit on the descent route, which suggests he had turned around. But whether he turned around before the summit or after remains unknown. His oxygen was gone. The day was late, the fall was catastrophic, and Irvine never came down. 2 names on a mountain that holds more questions than answers. George Lee Mallory, Andrew Irvine. Mallory's body was buried in a cairn where it was found. Irvine's remains are still somewhere above. A memorial plaque stands at Rongbuk Base Camp listing the dead of 1924. Both names are there. The mountain does not answer. It only keeps. No one knows if they summited first. No one knows what happened in the final hours. The Northeast Ridge remembers them in silence. June 8, 1924. 2 men climbing into clouds. 2 names on a ridge that holds them still.